Welcome to our YouTube video series on employment law. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal. And in this particular video, we're going to discuss why you should not simply quit your job and walk away from everything. And even though you might see a lot of stuff in Hollywood movies, and you might review a lot of stuff on the internet, and a lot of it's coming from the United States, but even stuff from Canada, you're going to be left with a perception that when you leave a job, you leave it behind. Your obligations from your employer don't really exist. Your former boss simply needs to pay you the last paycheck, and that's about the end of it. Now, for the Canadian employee, especially an employee in Alberta, nothing could really be farther from the truth. As an employee who is quitting their job, leaving their job, they need to take the time and review their payroll. They need to be assured that they have been fully paid for all the work they've done. If you've earned income, if you've earned pay, you are entitled to that money. Well, it makes sense. The only problem is most people don't even look into it. Most people don't even understand their payroll statements. And why is that? Well, most pay statements are complicated. They don't really give you the clarification you need to understand whether or not your company is correctly following the laws of your jurisdiction, namely the provincial employment standards legislation. And because it's complicated, because it's convoluted, and because nobody, not even the payroll people all too often, but definitely not the lawyers and the accountants and the number crunchers, nobody wants to get into payroll. Payroll is problematic, and there's way too many errors that we see in payroll statements and in people's pay. And invariably, those mistakes almost always work against the employee. But if they don't see it, they don't bring it to the attention of their employer, and now their former employer, they're not going to get it corrected. No boss, out of the goodness of their heart, is simply going to correct their payroll mistakes. You need to be bringing it to their attention. The only time you really can bring it to their attention is at the end of your employment. Because if you start to bring it to their attention and you show them that they're messing everything up, and that they owe you lots of money, and they probably owe everybody else lots of money, you can be pretty sure they're not going to like that. And if you push it, you might not be having a job for that much longer. So it typically falls upon those individuals who either are fired, terminated, or even quit. And naturally, when people are fired or terminated from their job, they put a bit of investigatory work into it. But their focus tends to be on their termination pay and their severance pay. And for whatever reason, the lawyers especially don't even look at the payroll. For them too, it's complicated. They look at the law. They don't look at the math. Well, at least correctly, they don't look at how the law relates to the math, relates to legislation, and what the issues are. When you look at it, you see there's almost every employer could be subject to underpayments. And it's not just going to be those people who are fired or terminated, it's even those people who quit. Because yes, you might not be entitled to anything further as a result of your quitting your job. But there's a good possibility, especially in many Canadian provinces and in many employment circumstances, that the employee did not receive all the money that they earned. And how do you not receive all the money that you've earned? Very simply, your employer failed to calculate your payroll costs in accordance with the law of the jurisdiction within which you're working. And why does this happen? Well, it's because the software and the payroll practices tend to emanate from one location, and it tends to typically not to emanate from the location where you're working. So whether it's the United States or it's Ontario, that is how the payroll tends to be calculated and paid out. So if you're in another province, be it Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Maritimes, even British Columbia, and even Ontario, there is a likelihood, in many cases a very strong likelihood, that your calculations were not done consistent with the provincial employment standards legislation of the jurisdiction within which you were working, that being the province. And because they're not done correctly, there's underpayments. And these underpayments accumulate. And they can be extremely consequential. You could be underpaid by 5%, 10%, 15% of what you actually got paid. This is money that accumulates over time and remains due and owing to yourself. So you have to really look into this. And it's money that's due to yourself, irrespective of how you leave your job. So it doesn't matter if you're fired, terminated, or quit. If money is owed to you, it's your money. Yes, the different provinces have different requirements with respect to how you collect upon it. Naturally, one of the things you don't want to be doing is look at it from the Employment Standards Officer, Employment Standards Tribunal, because then there are limitations. Remember, Employment Standards Officers, Employment Standards Tribunals are designed to be cost-efficient, time-efficient mechanisms. They don't go back as far as you would want them to go. Such, you're pretty much stuck with the court processes, using the additional provisions in the legislation to tackle the monies that you've earned. This is money that you earned, you're entitled to it legally, and it's protected by statute. And it's simply what's happened all too often. It's been inappropriately calculated because the wrong set of calculations were done, because they used the wrong software, the wrong systems, the wrong math, which was correct, maybe if you're in the province of Ontario and you're in Alberta. Maybe it's because they use the calculations that are specific to New Jersey or Connecticut or New York or California. But unless you worked in those states, those other countries, those other provinces, you cannot be paid according to those lesser systems, even though your employer would like it to be that way. No, you have to be paid according to the laws of the jurisdiction within which you worked. And if your jurisdiction, based on their calculations, calls for more, you're entitled to it. How you fight it? It's another challenge, but it's something you talk with your lawyer about. Because there's considerable amounts of money that we're talking about. It's not chump change. It's 5%, 10%, 15% of what you're making. Sometimes it's not that much. Sometimes it is. But until you investigate it, you're not going to be able to determine whether or not you are owed that money. So you have to look into it. Like I say, it doesn't matter if you're fired or terminated or even quit your job. When you leave your job, one of the benefits of leaving your job on top of it is you're not signing any paperwork. You're not signing any releases or obligations. So take the time, make a look at it, and see if there is any money that's owed to yourself. Because once again, this is earned money. You're legally entitled to it. The provincial employment standards legislation prescribed it. And if your employer failed to calculate your pay in accordance with the laws of your province, well, it's too bad for them. But it's too bad for you also if you don't look into it and deal with it, even when you're quitting your job, even when you're leaving your job. Because it's money that is owed to you. You've earned it. And now you're going simply look to collect upon it. Because you have nothing to lose. You've already quit your job. Why not collect your money? And that's what we have to say about this topic. So take the time when you're quitting your job to look into your payroll before you simply walk away and forget about it. Don't forget about it. Look into it. Thank you.